You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks for making us your first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Joining you on a reaction episode, and this episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And of course, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, we are here reacting to, well, Deutschendorf Cup disappointment as the Red Raiders fall on the road. 20-13, the final score. Plenty to get into as we kick off the week with you tomorrow. But here today, a few specific things to get into. We'll run down our keys to the game lists. Chris had one. I had one. Tweeted it out there at Locked On Tech or on X, whatever we do there these days. We'll recap and see what standard we met, maybe what we fell short on. But of course, Chris, beyond the game, we'll start our conversation here today with just extreme frustration and feeling for now your former QB1, Tyler Shuck, who suffers a gruesome injury, somehow guts it out to remain on the field for another play. But then we see him carted off. And, man, knowing everything that's gone into the Tyler Shuck football story, just really feeling for that guy and thinking about things obviously well beyond football when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, that part, regardless of what anybody's preference was on what QB you wanted or whatever, I mean, I just that part is just it's a gut punch just to see a kid kind of go out like that. It's not good. I think it's been reported quite a bit already. You know, appears to be broken. I think that, you know, that's a season ender. I think so. And just the replay and the video, it's just one of those deals where it just sucks, man. And I know people probably don't care about that part, but he was extremely respected in the locker room by how seriously he took all of this, how hard he works at it, how much he puts into it. And this is just going to be, you know, like the one thing you remember is that he just never had a full season here, you know, and I think that he gets, and deservedly so, gets a ton of credit for the 4-game win streak last year. And he was Texas Bowl MVP and all those things, but just abruptly comes to an end, just like that. And the dynamics of your season change too, because now all of a sudden Barron is in the mix, and he finished the game up. I would guess it's his season now, but he didn't finish that game healthy either, I don't think. I don't know if there's anything serious there or if it's just minor, but, you know, he was, you know, wincing pretty much as he warmed up most of the latter part of the second half and just trying to kind of gut it out, and he was able to finish the game. And again, maybe it's just he got dinged up and he'll be fine, or maybe he won't be. I don't really know, but it changes the dynamics of your team, because now you went from like, okay, you've got a nice 1-2 punch, and now you've got a guy with some experience, and then you have no experience behind him whatsoever because you have Jake Strong and then the name of Will Burns who's on your team. That would be the, you know, I guess theoretically the third string guy, or I mean, I guess the backup if there's any scenario where Barron can't play in a game. So, wow. And it was just a miserable day in Morgantown. The result was miserable. The weather was miserable. You know, your third down conversion rate was miserable. I mean, it just was a rough day.
Yeah, all the way around. And, man, it gets really, really interesting with that QB room we spent so much time talking about over the offseason. But you mentioned some names there, and you mentioned possibly a hobbled Morton leaving that game, at least to an extent. But it's his show now, Chris, and nobody, whether you wanted to see a change or not, nobody wants to see a change come about as a result of this. And I don't think there's any way to leave the Tyler Shuck era, if we are indeed leaving it for good, without respecting what that guy brought as a Red Raider each and every day. And when you think about, again, the number of bounce backs we've already got in the rear view, and I have no doubt we'll have another one here for him personally as he moves on with his life, but not only returning to the fold, but being impactful when he did return. And therein, as a result, I think, like you said there, commanding a lot of respect for his teammates. And I would only echo that as a fan, because you could never question the dude's toughness or his commitment to trying to be a Red Raider.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think, and it's just like I'm sure he feels like he's just snake bit. Just feels like can't have any good luck go his way. And I really felt like, because last year, if you go back to last year, even with the offense in general, and it was Donovan that was a part of this part, but they had kind of been semi average on offense last year, and then it was like the game 4 where they really kind of started to put some things together against Texas last year, and they were really good on 4th down in that game, as we documented, and I thought that you were kind of okay. You're at some point you're going to start to get on track and get some rhythm to you. And it's just a shame that he's not going to get a chance to do that. Now it's Barron's opportunity, possibly, to roll through that. But yeah, Tyler, man, it's just I don't know if there's a break with an ankle or fibula. I think it has been reported. I don't know what the timetable on that is, but I don't think you're playing football the rest of this season. And yeah, that's just not how you want to see it go, man. I don't care what your personal thoughts are on anything or preferences. You just don't want to see somebody go down like that, because it's a shock to the system when teammates see something like that too. And like, it's just never good when you immediately you see them call for the cart, like immediately. And regardless of who's out there, or what the situation is, it's kind of like the young man with Tarleton the week before, man. And when it gets, football's rough and guys do get hurt, that's part of it. But man, you just never want to see them have to cart somebody off, especially somebody that's so important. Because I mean, it happened 2 years ago in Austin, and you feel like, okay, maybe you can have a chance here, and he goes into the end zone and just dove in for a touchdown, but he cracked his collarbone. And then that game just kind of got sideways with you. I think when just you weren't mentally tough enough then. I thought you battled back a bit yesterday and got behind Barron and all that in a very winnable game. You just couldn't get over the hump. But yeah, just, and I know a lot of those guys, they didn't like the result. Nobody likes the result. But yeah, I think you were a lot of thoughts were with Tyler Shuck yesterday and will continue to be. I mean, he's going to be fine. It's just the football part is over for a bit.
Yeah, no question about it, man. Sickening stuff to consider there as far as the adversity that he's going to have to deal with once again. But unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know what way you want to call it, he has practiced in this area. So I have no doubt he'll be able to handle it in the right way and bounce back in whatever way that looks like. We also have some actual football conversation that might turn your stomach as well. So stay tuned. That's coming up next as Chris and I's keys to the game are under further review. Up ahead on Locked On Texas Tech. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And these days, every new hire can feel like a huge gamble. And when we're talking about your livelihood or your business, that's not ideal, but never fear. That's where LinkedIn comes in to save the day by helping you find the best qualified candidates available fast and for free, all on one easy to use and secure platform. So head on over right now to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to take advantage of their simple but specific targeting tools, allowing you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to consider. They go well beyond just resume data by using insights from your job post and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates faster than anybody else. So go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege today to identify the most qualified candidates and connect with them fast and for free. A bad hire could sink your ship, but just the right hire could take your business to new heights this year. And that's just one reason why it's no coincidence that small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So head on over right now to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege and post your job for free today. It's so easy. A Pac-12 commissioner could do it at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post that job for free today with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech reaction episode as the Red Raiders fall to the Mountaineers of West Virginia back in the LBK to host the Houston Cougars coming up ahead, as we'll obviously turn the page this week. Hope you'll join us throughout the week on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts for that. Before we're out of here on this episode, however, under review with Chris and I's keys to the game. We kick them out there on Twitter at Locked On Tech. If you haven't followed us yet, let's see how they did, Chris. We will begin with your keys to the game. Now, to recap, if you haven't seen these before, Chris had a couple of really good ideas. Stop or limit the West Virginia ground game. Don't give them anything cheap, whether turnovers or special teams. You get the idea. And also improve your third down success rate from a week ago where you were 6 for 14. So, Chris, you see it there on the screen. I've included, for those not watching on YouTube, what the reality turned out to be. So, number one, stopping or limiting the West Virginia ground game. At the end of the day, you wind up, and these are sack-adjusted totals, 40 attempts, 163 yards, 4 yards per attempt. Got into the end zone one time on the ground. Of course, some of this involved the quarterback doing it himself as well. I don't know how you feel, Chris, but I certainly felt like the defense gave you a winning effort, whether specifically against the ground game or overall. Not saying it's pretty, but I think you did enough to survive that. You didn't really just get steamrolled. I didn't feel like, at least. How'd you see it?
Yeah, I think the one surprising part is how much Marchiol was involved in those rushing totals. I think he netted, close to 70, 80 yards rushing on just a couple of, he got loose a couple of times. It just kind of backbreaker type stuff. I just wasn't expecting him to necessarily be as big a part of it because, your other quarterback over there is in a boot and wasn't available in an emergency situation. But I thought traditionally, I thought you did a good job on Donaldson. He had some nice runs in the first half, but was bottled up largely in the second half. And I think that we were all surprised at how much they threw it at the end of the game, and especially in situations. And maybe they assumed that you were thinking run, and so you felt like, okay, we got some man-to-man coverage out there. Then they threw it some, but I thought you limited their ground game for the most part. And the part, like the key number 2 there, I thought, as good as the defense played, this is where they because they had the +2 and the turnovers. You offensively, you don't turn it over at all. And I thought, man, if you tell me right now, man, you have a +2 in the turnover margin, I would have felt like you get away with the win. You only converted those 2 turnovers into 3 points. But there were some bad penalties or untimely penalties. Joey had an issue with some of them after the game is over. He kind of spoke about that just a bit, but I think he pointed to 4 of those penalties were on third downs that convert to firsts and give keep drives alive for West Virginia. And that was really a bad pass interference penalty. You had just kind of a face mask. I mean, and a couple of those were on one of the last drives of the game when I literally stood next to someone and I said, man, just be smart here. And then you look up and you have a face mask 15 yards. And you have a ball that's underthrown, and I think it was Baskerville on the play in the end zone, and he just kind of semi runs over the receiver, and it's a first down or whatever, and you move the ball closer to the goal line. They ended up scoring a touchdown a few plays later. But those were the only issue you could have with the defense for the most part. Okay, you let Marchiol get loose a few times on the ground game, but just some bad penalties. And I can't sit here and say bad call, good call, but it was what it was, but it allowed drives to stay alive and it hurts you. So you did kind of give them some things, so needed to be better there. And then as you see on the last one there, weren't better on third down. It was an all-time bad. And I asked Joey about that after the game, but that kind of, and you were able to convert some fourth downs, thankfully, to kind of just make sure you could stay in this game and have a chance to win it and throw it in the end zone at the end. But your third downs were just, it was just rough. And I think there was a lot of 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 9s, and things like that. And so tougher third downs to complete. It wasn't like you were getting stuffed on runs on 3rd and 2. It was just, and the weather was miserable, whether that plays a part or not. A lot of drops, a lot of missed throws, a lot of just missed execution on third downs that adds to it. But you're just not good enough to overcome 2 for 18 on third down. I don't care who you're playing in this league.
And you're right to call it all-time bad. Good grief. I know it was bad watching the game, but when I went back and looked statistically afterwards, I thought it was a typo. I'm like, this has to be a misprint. Surely it wasn't that bad, but it was. And you're touching on some of what I had on my list. Let's turn the page to my keys to victory. Number 1, similar to one of Chris's, no gift-wrapped opportunities for West Virginia. I mentioned in the last 2 games, you had 5 giveaways. West Virginia had 5 takeaways. Simply as it related to the turnover margin, I kind of have to check that box for Tech. They were +2. The offense didn't give it up. Still took a few away, courtesy of Dunlap and Ben Roberts with a little help. So I think as far as my number 1, I got to check that box that you mostly did that. Number 2, attack and pressure, redshirt freshman QB in his first career start, Chris. And I don't necessarily feel like you did that consistently. Statistically, only 1 sack to show for it. 0 quarterback hurries you were credited with, for whatever that's worth. You did create 2 turnovers in the passing game, and he had an ugly day statistically. It wasn't like he was 12 for 21. So I don't know. I was a little conflicted whether you pulled that off or not. Do you feel like they were really pressuring this guy in his first start?
I think he kind of panicked on a few of those interceptions. I'm not sure if you ultimately rattled him, because he stepped up and made some really key throws.
Yeah, he did.
Late in the game, and there was a missed shot that they took late in the game, and I was like, whoa, they're going for this. It was just slightly overthrown. He underthrew a guy that was wide open, and then they reviewed it, and I think it bounced, but it was really close to being a catch, and that was underthrown. But I thought for the most part, he played a pretty good game considering how young he is and considering how he managed it, short of the 2 mistakes that he threw you. Now, one of those was a bad throw. The other one was a tip. So it's not really on him. And you could even argue that those statistics, those tipped interceptions should be counted as a fumble on the wideout, not on the quarterback. But, I don't know if you really rattled him. And I thought he was a lot more useful with his legs than I was expecting him to be, because it's widely known that Garrett Green was the runner, but Markiel certainly stepped up. And I thought, if anything, that was his best attribute at times yesterday.
Yep.
Was ability to kind of get loose on you a little bit and sneak down the field on a couple of times and move the chains.
Man, really got to credit him. I was impressed with his toughness and some of his composure as the game went on, because they weren't really ever able to pull away. So what you were doing was always high stakes as you tried to keep a lead, which obviously they eventually did. But I certainly want to credit him and credit West Virginia overall, because I was impressed. Even though it wasn't always pretty, I was impressed with some of what he was able to do in his first career start. And yeah, you see the stomach turning one there at number 3. I mentioned third downs as well, just like Chris. I went a little bit different route, Chris, just saying I'd like to see better first down production to improve your third down odds. And what I listed in those keys was that against Wyoming and Oregon, you needed on average 7.1 and 8.2 yards on third down. That is tough sledding for any team. Well, this time around, you already know you went 2 for 18 on third down. And Chris alluded to this. You got really no better as far as what was needed on third down. On average, it was 7.9, almost 8 yards you needed to gain. What did you gain on third down? On average, 2.8 8. So nowhere near, and that's why you wind up 2 for 18. And for those interested, your first down production, around 4.6 average yards you were gaining there on each first down, 5.3 whenever you were running the ball, 4.1 whenever you're passing the ball. I don't feel like that's that bad of a number, Chris, but either way, you still were unable to put yourself in favorable third down situations. That's what every team in the country wants to do, so I'm not acting like this is some third down curse, but yeah, man, all-time bad to see that number, 2 for 18 at the end of the day, and that's why you were sitting here in large part as a 1-3 football team. So a whole lot to process still as we get into the week and turn the page to a home opportunity against Houston. Hope you'll join us once again tomorrow as we do that. And obviously, Chris, it's already been an interesting quarterback conversation this season, and it gets a lot more interesting for some wrong reasons as we head into the week and you turn to the next man in line. So should be interesting to watch and see what happens, man. Thanks for the time. As always, glad you made it back to the LBK. Enjoyed this conversation, even though it wasn't a whole lot of enjoyable content to converse about. But we're going to do it again tomorrow. Chris, thanks for the time as always, man.
You bet, man. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And join us tomorrow as we kick off the week right back here on Locked On Texas Tech.